Can you share a time when you struggled with body image or societal expectations related to appearance, and how did you navigate through it?
So I think most of my childhood I kind of battled that. I was born with cataracts, so I always had like the really thick Coke bottle glasses that people had.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it wasn't normal for kids to have glasses like that. So for like me, and not only that, but I was a little bit heavier. It was kind of like everybody was like, you know, I was always 4 eyes, or I was always chubby or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I kind of navigated through that by really like my family. I think my family helped me the most. Like the way that they supported me and the way that they like taught me to ignore it. You know, obviously there's still going to be times even when you're ignoring it where they still hurt and like they get to you, or you're on a bad day and you can't fight, you know, what they're saying in your head. But I think it was mostly them encouraging me that, you know, who cares what other people think,
Yeah.
and to just ignore the hate, basically.
Okay. And how do you think societal pressures influence how men are expected to handle their mental health? And have you personally felt affected by these expectations?
So I feel like society doesn't want men, they don't want men to share what's going on in their head. I feel like specifically it affected me, I don't know if this is part of that question or not, but it affected me like during my marriage, because if, you know, my wife and I were fighting and we got into it and like I got upset and I showed any kind of weakness, she kind of was, you know, like standoffish about that, didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it legitimately changed the way that she felt about me and the way she saw me. And so I feel like that's a lot of society these days, and I feel like a lot of society wants us to not show that weakness, and I feel like that's the wrong way to do it. I feel like we need to be able to, especially with the people we love, be able to show, you know, a certain amount of emotion and weakness, and I feel like the way that society views it's wrong. So.
Okay. Kind of like exposing yourself and showing that weakness kind of makes you seem like you're not the provider or the weak, you know, you're not that
Right.
caretaker that you're supposed to be.
Right. Just because society thinks that we should be all those things doesn't mean we have to be those things, doesn't mean we're less because we are different from what they say.
Yeah. Okay. And then reflecting on like the era that you grew up in, or the area that you grew up in, how do you feel it shaped your perspective on masculinity, mental health, and seeking support?
So I grew up in Central and Southern California, and I really grew up with my grandpa. My grandpa raised me. He was the only real man in my life.
Mm-hmm.
He was the opposite of like the way I am. I think that's why. I think the way that seeing him and the way he was made me want to be opposite of that, because he was like the societal norm. He was like the manly man who only missed literally 2 days in 30 years of working and never talked about mental health, and you could see him going through things, and he always said he was okay and fine. And I think being around that made me not want to be that way, because I saw him as is cussing fine? Okay, I saw him as like the hard ass who never wanted to show any kind of emotion other than anger, and I knew I didn't want to be that way. So that's kind of like, I think that's how my upbringing and like my area and all the people I grew up with in California were like friends of his, and they were all the same way. Treat their family like, you know, negatively in a way. Like they still love you, but they treat you like you're there for a job, basically like a boss more than like a family. So
Okay.
it's kind of made me want to be opposite of that.
Okay. And have you encountered any challenges or stigmas when discussing your mental health or seeking help, and how did you overcome them?
So, yeah, I mean, I've told, like, I've tried to tell certain friends, you know, hey, I'm having trouble, things like that, and they're like, oh, just man up, you know, you'll be fine, you know, get through it, push through it.
I'm hoping they're former friends.
yeah, not anymore. And that was kind of, I think that's why they were former friends. Like when I heard them, I was expecting support, and instead it was like man up, and I was like, you know, you can't just man up. That's I think that's the most cliche thing to say is man up. Like what does that mean? You know what I mean? And I overcame that by finding better friends and having like a better and smaller circle. So now my circle, like inner circle, is really down to like 3 people, and they all support me, and we all vent to each other and, you know, help each other out and like give each other advice whenever we need it.
Okay.
And I feel like that's how I navigated it, because like instead of just going with what the negativity says, I found and engaged in positivity in my life and only let the positive friends in.
Okay. And then, in what ways do you believe like cultural norms and stereotypes have in fact impacted your perception of yourself and your mental well-being?
So I feel like I've let like other people's image of what normal should be or what I should be affect me for a while. And I made it to where like I was trying to dress a certain way to like be cool or whatever, or, you know, just try to be like normal, like the social normal. And I didn't like that, so I've kind of in my head made a decision that I didn't want to do that anymore, that I just wanted to be myself. And I just had to make, like, it was hard, but I just had to make that conscious decision to just not care about what anybody else thinks and just be me. And so that's kind of how I did it.
Okay.
I mean, it took a while. Obviously, there was like sad, depressing days. But once I got it, and now it's like, you know, when people say things, I've taught myself to, who cares what other people think.
Yeah, because I mean, we like, especially growing up, we all try to fit in and kind of blend in with our surroundings because we don't want to be targeted or picked on or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you try to fit in with like the preppy kids or the jocks or, you know.
Right.
And sometimes that works. Most of the time it blows up in your face and
yeah. It's like the one time you let them see who you really are, it blows up and you're just like,
and you're
so
like, that was
well, just be yourself.
Yeah, and you're like, well, that was a terrible choice.
Yeah.
And then can you discuss a specific moment or experience that highlighted the importance of addressing mental health for men, either personally or within your community?
Can you say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So can you discuss a specific moment or experience that highlighted the importance of addressing mental health issues for men, either that happened to you personally or within your community?
So I had a friend in Ohio who, like, he had mental health issues, and the people that he went to, unfortunately he didn't come to me, but the people he went to basically told him that social norm, that man up and that kind of thing. He ended up driving off a cliff, and he actually survived, but like the effect of that, like he got so bad that he thought he couldn't turn to anybody else and he wanted to like hurt himself. That was just like baffling to me, and so that's kind of like that's kind of changed my perception on like mental health, and that's like the thing I think that made me want to focus on my mental health and the mental health of other men, because like nobody should feel so down and depressed or sad that they feel like they need to take their own life. I feel like just call me, you know what I mean? Even if you don't know me, call me and I'll help you the best I can, even if it's just for venting or whatever.
Yeah.
You need support. So
Okay.
I don't know if I answered that correctly, but
No, I mean, absolutely you did. And then, so since, like, for instance, like, let's use, like, from childhood to now, how has society's attitude towards masculinity evolved, and how has this impacted your own journey with mental health and your own views of your masculinity?
So I feel like when I was young and growing up, all I had was my grandpa. So all I had was that like kind of toxic masculinity where he was like always just angry, only showed negative emotions. And now, like, surrounding myself with the right people and the way that society is starting to change, I feel like it's starting to get better. It's definitely not there yet. But I do notice that, like, men are starting to talk more, starting to speak out more, especially on, like, TikTok and things. Like, I feel like that was one of the best things to come out of TikTok is, like, men and just everybody, really, but men specifically can express themselves more and say how they're feeling and have other people that they've never met before support them.
Yeah.
And so it brings in like a whole new group of people to support you that you didn't have before, because they're all strangers on the internet, but they're still supporting you.
Yeah.
So I feel like that definitely wasn't a thing back then. So
Yeah. And like, I know we talked about like your grandpa and everything like that. And since your grandpa, have there been any other than like your grandpa, have there been any other generational differences in how mental health is perceived or addressed within your family or social circles, and how has that influenced your own approach to self-care?
So, yeah, I mean, maybe not even just my grandpa, but like I've noticed with my uncle, he's almost the same way as my grandpa, but he's better.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I've got to witness the progression of like him wanting to talk to people and him going to therapy now.
Mm-hmm.
And like seeing that made me more positive towards like, talking about it and mental health and like that kind of thing. So like I've been able to see my grandpa on the one spectrum, and then my uncle started out kind of on that spectrum, but now he's going to where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And then me, obviously being open to speaking about it and talking and, fixing what needs to be fixed. So I think it's cool to like see that progression from them to us, so you can see in the different generations how it's slowly getting better.
Okay. And do you see that, like, for instance, I don't know, do you have like nephews at all, or?
I have a niece. I don't have a nephew. I have like young cousins, male cousins.
And do you see that it's a bit more like they're being a bit more accepted when it comes to like their emotions and feelings?
Yeah, like my cousins that have kids, that have male kids, are like, allowing them to talk about it instead of just saying, rub some dirt on it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, what's wrong. They talk to them more, and I feel like it's definitely changing for
Mm-hmm.
the better. And allowing them to express themselves. I'm like that now with my son,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody was really like that with me. So I have a 4-year-old, and I'm the same way. I'm like, tell me what's going on. Don't hold it in. Let us know what's going on so we can talk about it and work through it together.
Mm-hmm. You're trying to fix that generational trauma over the course of time.
Right.
So what strategies have you found effective in challenging traditional notions of masculinity and promoting a healthier relationship with mental health?
So really just communication and like talking about it, I think for me specifically helps the most.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like in my relationships and stuff. Like I tell everybody from the get-go when I start a relationship or a friendship even, like, I'm not one of those guys that's just gonna, be a brick wall and be like a manly. I want to be able to express myself openly and be who I am without you judging me. And if you want to judge me, I'm sorry, we're not meant to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I feel like communication is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you don't communicate and you stay, I feel like you stay in your bubble and nothing changes. So
Yeah.
I feel like with everybody, I want to communicate with everybody and tell everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then in terms of like body image, how do you think the media growing up that we watched, because like obviously we had, we grew up in the era of the action hero, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris. Like, how do you think that shaped our image of manhood and masculinity? How do you think that affected our mental health?
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, they always, like, I always will remember, I can't remember what news station it was, but it was like, oh man, who was it now? I think it was like Matt Damon or something.
Mm-hmm.
He was in between movies, and like they posted a picture of him kind of chubby, and they were like, oh my gosh, look at him, he let himself go. And like that kind of thing. And then of course with, like you said, the Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Sylvester Stallone, they were always like 6-pack abs, super fit, and everybody's like, oh, look at this awesome celebrity. So it kind of makes you feel like, if you're not that, then you're not worthy of, being news or whatever, or being in.
Yeah, I mean, that even happens now with, big name celebrities, they, like the Hemsworth, like if you're not a Hemsworth, like, like Chris Hemsworth gains a little bit of weight after being Thor for, X amount of years as, in MCU. He gains a little bit of weight after, being Thor. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, he got so fat. And it's like, that's not fat.
Yeah. and 50 Cent, I don't know if you remember the 50 Cent thing, like at one of the award shows, like he was, normal. Like I feel like, for me, in my opinion, I feel like he was normal. He was like a normal looking guy.
He was an average guy.
And they were like, oh my gosh, he's so fat, he's put on so much weight, because he used to be on drugs and like anorexic skinny almost, whatever. Which is fine too, but like they call him fat because he looks more
average.
I feel like his body's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Like an average healthy body.
Yeah, but yeah, like, so like, how do you think that, like, do you think that really affected like how you were supposed to look growing up?
Yeah, I feel like that kind of made me think about it. Like, I don't fit in. I gotta be this dorky, chubby kid because I don't have six-pack abs. I'm not paper thin, and it's kind of like. And then it's hearing them talk bad about people when they gain a little bit of weight. You're like, oh man, well I got a little bit of weight too. So what does that say about me?
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, do you think that attributes to kids nowadays when you see them super jacked and they're constantly going to the gym and they're stressed about going to the gym, and if they miss a session at the gym, they like have almost nearly anxiety attacks? Do you think the pressure that social media and the media itself puts on, or how hard they push these celebrities that like Chris Hemsworth and everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without the media pushing them, there'd be nobody to say anything about it. If nobody said anything about it, then I don't think people would care as much. But all you hear about is, this person lost 50 pounds, or this person's ripped for this movie, and you see all these like shirtless pictures and all that stuff now. And I feel like it has to push it because everybody wants to fit in, everybody wants to feel welcome, and they want to not feel like an outcast. So
yeah.
I feel like and anxiety is huge now. Especially in these days, everything is even worse. It was big back then, but people didn't talk about it. Now we're talking about it. So now anxiety is actually being talked about. And I think it's a good thing.
And especially with the invention of social media, it's gotten even worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a couple more questions. Obviously, women are facing the same thing on their side of the spectrum with supermodels and social media celebrities. With plastic surgery and their beauty standards. Do you feel like on the other side of the coin, they're facing their own battles with beauty standards and standards of how they need to look?
Oh yeah. I feel like when Matt Damon probably saw that picture of himself, he probably felt really bad about himself. And I feel like they are pushed so much by the media by, oh my gosh, look at him on the beach with his abs, that they're like, I have to work hard. And they probably have anxiety just like the kids do. I need to get to the gym, I need to work out because I have this image to uphold, and I have to look a certain way, and Hollywood expects me to be this way, so now I got to stay this way. So I feel like it does affect them too. It's a different way of affecting them, but it's still affecting them too.
Okay. And the last question, looking ahead, what changes would you like to see in how society views and supports men's mental health?
So, I would like men to be able to talk about their feelings without like my ex-wife making them feel like less than. So that would be the most important thing for me. Like men shouldn't be scared to talk about it, and they should be open, and they should be willing to come forward and talk about it. And the only way that's going to do is by talking and debating and having things like this, like what we're doing, and not hiding it and sweeping it under the rug. Because I think that's the biggest mistake is for years things were just swept under the rug and tried to be hidden. And that's not the way to fix things. You can't just fix them by sweeping them under the rug. So I feel like it's starting to get better, but there's still a long way to go. And I think we're going in the right direction. So I think that communication is huge. I think that everybody needs to just be more open to talking and open to helping and stop judging.
Okay, and actually I do have one more question.
Yeah.
The previous generations that are still around, that are all these soft boys that are talking about their feelings, they're too sensitive, yada yada yada. What do you think? What would you say to someone who would say that to you or to someone that you know?
Like that I'm too sensitive.
Or that you're a soft boy because you're talking about your feelings.
Yeah, maybe you're not sensitive enough. Maybe you should look into yourself and see what makes you feel that way. Because maybe there's something going on with you that you need to talk about too. If you feel like me talking about my feelings and being open with how I feel is sensitive, maybe it is, but why is that a bad thing? Maybe you need to look at yourself as why that's a bad thing. Are you saying it's a bad thing because you feel that way, or are you saying it's a bad thing because of society's told you to feel that way? Or your parents or grandparents have told you to feel that way? So I feel like they need to be more open to. Maybe they need more help too. Maybe that last generation needs more help than our generation. Because I mean, our generation needs help too, but maybe that generation needs more help because they're saying, "Oh, you're in your feelings," or "Oh, you're being sensitive." I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a silly thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, everybody has emotions, everybody feels. Just because I don't hide mine doesn't make me any less of a person or a man than you.
Yeah, no, I got you. It just, obviously, you jump on social media, you always see, like the baby boomers who are always like jumping on, like, oh, these boys are too soft nowadays, and this, that, and the other. And like, I've had that happen to me before, and I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
Like, I'm not one of those guys that's like all about like, oh, being the big tough man or whatever, but but I can be emotional and do the same things you do, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I work hard enough, I can lift as strong as the guy that's being a hard ass. You know, if I work strong enough, I can be as smart as this other guy. You know what I mean? It's not. I might be more emotional than you, but I'm capable of the same things you're capable of. So.
All right. And then just one last thing I need you to do. I need you to just look into the camera, and I want you to say something to the guys out there that are struggling. Whatever you want to say to them that may watch this video that you want to say to them.
Don't be afraid to talk about how you feel. You have people here supporting you. You have people that are here for you, listening to what you have to say. And it doesn't matter what other people think about you. What matters is how you think about yourself. And you should never think negative about yourself. You should always think positive about yourself. If you need anything, reach out to somebody. Don't just hide in a corner. Don't be by yourself. Make sure you have help. And if you don't have help, come to me. I'll help you. Just make sure you take care of your brain, because it's the only one you got, and you're the only person that's always going to be in your life. So make sure that you are important. When you wake up, make sure you love yourself.
All right. Well, Dallas, I wanted to thank you for doing this project for me. I wanted to thank you for your participation and opening up. I know it probably wasn't the easiest thing to do. I know sometimes these things can get pretty raw, having to dig down, and especially the negative adjectives part's usually probably the hardest thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Because that's you essentially have to insult yourself, and that's always the hardest part for most people to do. So I just want to thank you for being willing to do that and participate. So yeah, just thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity, man. Like, I think it's so important. So.
All right.
I respect it.
All right, I appreciate it.
Of course.